This boy was born into poverty so deep, even hunger became normal. His name is Elijah. He lived in a small broken-down house with his mom, dad, and 2 younger sisters. The roof leaked when it rained. The walls were cracked. They had no running water, and their electricity was often cut off. At night, they lit candles to see. During winter, they slept in one bed to stay warm. Most days, Elijah didn't eat breakfast. Sometimes he didn't even eat lunch. His mother would boil water just to pretend they had soup, because his little sister cried when her stomach was empty. His father worked 2 jobs, one in a factory and another collecting trash. But no matter how hard he worked, the money was never enough. Rent was late, bills piled up, and some days, Elijah saw his dad just sit in silence, holding his head with both hands, crying quietly so no one would hear. At school, Elijah was bullied for wearing the same clothes every day. His shoes were torn at the sides. He would pretend to tie his shoelaces just to hide the holes. He sat alone during lunch, not because he wanted to, but because he had nothing to eat, and he didn't want others to see. One winter night, everything changed. His little sister Ava got very sick. She had a high fever, was shaking in her sleep, and couldn't stop coughing. They didn't have money for medicine or a doctor. Elijah's mom wrapped her in blankets and held her close all night. The next morning, Ava didn't wake up. She passed away right there in their arms. Not because of a disease, but because they were too poor to save her. That was the day Elijah stopped being a child. He was only 13, but grief turned him into a man overnight. He didn't cry at the funeral. He just stared at the coffin, holding his mother's hand while she wept into the dirt. From that day on, Elijah made himself a promise. He whispered it at Ava's grave. This will not be the end of our story. Elijah begins his journey from pain to purpose. After his sister's funeral, Elijah couldn't sleep the same anymore. Every night, he lay awake, thinking about her empty bed and his mother's quiet sobs. His father stopped talking much. He barely ate. The light in the house grew dim, not just from the lack of electricity, but from the weight of pain they all carried. One day, Elijah saw a neighbor fixing an old bicycle in their yard. He asked if he could help, just to learn. The man smiled and let him hold the tools. That was the first time Elijah touched a wrench. From that moment on, he started walking around town, asking anyone if they had something broken he could fix. At first, people said no. They laughed at him. A skinny boy with torn clothes asking to fix their machines. But one old man said yes. He let Elijah try to fix a fan that hadn't worked in months. Elijah sat with it all day. He didn't know what he was doing, but he didn't stop until he figured it out. When he made the fan spin, the old man gave him $5. It wasn't much, but to Elijah, it felt like gold. From that day, he never stopped. Every day after school, he worked. He fixed fans, radios, bikes, anything he could get his hands on. He used the money to buy bread and rice for his family. Slowly, the house had food again. He still walked in the same worn shoes, still got bullied, but he didn't care anymore. He had a mission now. By the time he turned 15, Elijah started watching free YouTube videos at the library to learn more about electronics. He'd stay there until closing, writing everything down. One day, he saw a video of a man who built solar-powered lamps for villages that didn't have electricity. That video changed everything. Elijah thought about the nights his family sat in the dark, about his little sister coughing in the cold, and he decided he would learn how to build those lamps. Elijah spent weeks studying solar power. He didn't have fancy tools, no internet at home, just old books from the library and borrowed parts from trash bins. He took broken radios, wires, scraps of metal, and slowly, piece by piece, he built his first solar lamp. It didn't look pretty. It was made from an old plastic bottle and a piece of glass. But when he placed it under the sun and saw it glow at night, he cried. Not because it worked, but because for the first time in years, his family had light again. His mom held the lamp like it was a miracle. His father looked at him and smiled for the first time since Ava died. That night, they didn't light a candle. They sat under Elijah's invention. And for the first time, the house didn't feel like a prison of poverty. It felt like hope. Elijah didn't stop there. He built more lamps and gave them to neighbors who also couldn't afford electricity. Word started to spread. People came to their house asking if the boy who made light could help them too. Elijah was still only 16, but his name was growing in town. One day, a local reporter heard about him. She visited, took photos of his lamp, and asked him one question. "Why are you doing this?" Elijah looked at her and said, "Because I couldn't save my sister, but maybe I can save someone else." That quote hit people hard. The article went viral online. Strangers from all over started sending messages. Some offered to donate, others asked how they could help. And then, a university reached out. They offered Elijah a full scholarship to study engineering. Not because of his grades, not because of his background, but because of his heart. Elijah moved to the city for college, and it wasn't easy. He felt out of place at first, surrounded by people who never had to wonder where their next meal would come from. But he stayed focused. While others partied, he studied. While they complained about slow Wi-Fi, he remembered nights with no electricity. He still wore cheap shoes, still sent most of his money back home. But inside, something had changed. He no longer saw himself as the poor kid from the broken house. He saw himself as someone with a purpose. In his final year, Elijah built something bigger. A portable solar power unit that could light up 5 rooms for an entire night. He tested it in his old neighborhood. One family cried when they saw light in their home for the first time in months. Elijah smiled, but deep inside he was thinking about Ava. Every lamp he made felt like a gift to her memory. After graduation, Elijah launched a project called Light for the Forgotten. His mission? To bring free solar lamps to low-income villages across the country. People donated, volunteers joined, and soon he had a team. A boy who once had nothing was now giving everything. Years later, Elijah stood on a stage, holding an award for humanitarian innovation. Cameras flashed, people clapped, but all he could think about was that night. The night his sister didn't wake up, and the promise he made at her grave. This won't be the end of our story. He kept it. He returned to that grave, years later, with flowers in one hand and his solar lamp in the other. He placed the lamp beside her name and whispered, "We made it. Ava and I did it for you." Because sometimes, purpose doesn't come from comfort. It comes from pain. And the ones who rise from nothing, they shine the brightest. Share this with someone who feels like giving up. Someone who needs to know that pain can become purpose. Follow for more real stories that prove even in the darkest places, light can still rise.